There is a thing that happens to people when they look at a giant redwood tree. They stand there, neck craned back, staring up at this colossal column of wood that weighs maybe 2 million pounds, and somewhere in the back of their mind they have this comfortable, warm, completely wrong idea about where all that stuff came from. They think the tree ate the ground. They think the dirt went up. They imagine some slow, quiet, polite process where the soil just sort of dissolved upward and became a trunk. And I find this fascinating, not because people are stupid for thinking it, but because the actual truth is so much more violent, so much more strange, and so much more beautiful that once you understand it, you will never look at a tree the same way again. So let us start with the arithmetic, because the arithmetic does not lie and it does not care about your feelings. If a redwood tree weighs 2 million pounds and it grew out of the ground, then where is the hole? Go find me the crater. Go look at the base of the oldest sequoia in California and show me the massive pit in the earth where all that mass used to be sitting before the tree pulled it up into itself. You will not find it. The ground around these trees is perfectly flat. There is no depression, no void, no evidence whatsoever that millions of pounds of material were extracted from the soil. And so right there, before we even open a chemistry book, the naive story collapses under its own weight. The dirt did not become the tree. The mass came from somewhere else entirely. Now, where did it come from? And this is where it gets genuinely strange. It came from the sky. It came from the invisible, seemingly empty air floating all around you right now as you sit there and breathe and think about other things. The solid, dense, impenetrable wood of a giant forest, the lumber in your floors and the beams in your walls and the paper in your books, that material was once floating around you as a colorless, odorless, invisible gas. The tree did not grow out of the ground. The tree condensed out of the atmosphere. The tree is frozen air. And once you truly internalize that, once you feel that in your stomach the way I want you to feel it, the world looks like a completely different place. Let me give you the industrial version of this, because I think it helps to have a good analogy when the truth is this strange. Imagine a factory, an enormous factory, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 3,000 years. And this factory has no raw material coming in on trucks. It has no ore being dug out of the earth. Instead, this factory reaches out into the open air with billions of tiny invisible grabbing arms, snatches a specific type of ghost molecule out of the passing wind, tears it apart into its component pieces, keeps one piece, throws the other pieces back into the air as waste, and then uses a beam of raw energy fired from a nuclear reactor 93 million miles away to weld those kept pieces together into a solid structure. And it does this trillions of times a second, every second, until eventually you have a tower of solid material, 100 meters tall, that weighs more than a blue whale. That factory is every tree you have ever seen. The ghost molecule it is snatching from the air is carbon dioxide. And here is the cold arithmetic of carbon dioxide that most people never think about. When you imagine this gas, you probably imagine something light and insubstantial, something almost ethereal and weightless. But carbon dioxide is not weightless. Carbon is not light. A single carbon atom has a mass of 12 atomic mass units. It is one of the heavier common atoms you are going to encounter in the atmosphere. And when you bind 2 oxygen atoms to it, you get a molecule that is actually heavier than the nitrogen and oxygen gas that makes up most of the air we breathe. Carbon dioxide is a heavy, substantial thing. It is just invisible. The atmosphere is loaded with these heavy carbon atoms. They are everywhere. They are in every breath you take. Right now, in the room around you, there are trillions upon trillions of carbon atoms floating in the air, each one locked in a tight embrace with 2 oxygen atoms. They are invisible and they feel like nothing, but they have mass. They are real, and a tree knows how to catch them. So here is what actually happens when a tree grows. And I want you to pay close attention to this because this is where the genuine physical strangeness lives. The tree pulls air in through tiny pores in its leaves. These pores are called stomata, and they are operating like billions of microscopic air intake valves spread across every leaf surface. The carbon dioxide molecules drift in. And then, inside the leaf, inside these incredible molecular machines called chloroplasts, something happens that should strike you as almost barbaric when you think about it in physical terms. The tree rips the carbon dioxide molecule apart. Carbon and oxygen are not casually attached to each other. They are in a genuine, stable, low-energy chemical bond. The molecule is happy. It is sitting in a comfortable energy state. To break that bond, to physically separate the carbon atom from the oxygen atoms it is clinging to, you need to put energy in. You need to add a significant amount of energy to the system because the bond itself represents stored energy and you cannot break it for free. Physics does not allow you to break chemical bonds without paying the price in energy. So where does the tree get the energy to do this violent molecular surgery on trillions of atoms every second? It gets it from a nuclear explosion. Not locally, not on Earth. The energy comes from the surface of the sun, where hydrogen atoms are being fused into helium under pressures and temperatures so extreme that matter itself changes its character. That fusion reaction releases energy, some of which travels outward from the sun as photons, as particles of pure electromagnetic radiation. These photons travel 93 million miles through the vacuum of space, losing nothing, because space is empty and there is nothing to absorb them. And after 8 minutes of travel at the speed of light, some of those photons hit a leaf, and the leaf catches them. The chlorophyll molecules in the leaf are precisely tuned to absorb photons of specific energies. When a photon hits a chlorophyll molecule, its energy is captured and transferred into the photosynthetic machinery. And that captured energy, that little packet of nuclear energy from the sun, is what gets used to break the bond between carbon and oxygen in the carbon dioxide molecule. The carbon is freed. The oxygen is ejected back into the air as waste, which is why we can breathe. And the freed carbon atom is grabbed and chemically linked to other freed carbon atoms, building long chains and rings and structures of pure carbon, which are then assembled into glucose, into cellulose, into lignin, into all the complex organic molecules that make up the solid structure of wood. The solid wood of the tree is a crystallized record of captured sunlight. Every ring in the cross-section of a tree trunk represents a year of photons arriving from the sun and being locked into chemical bonds. The mass of the tree is literally materialized sunlight. The tree is a device for converting radiation into matter, for taking the energy of a nuclear reaction happening 93 million miles away and using it to physically assemble invisible gas into a solid, touchable, load-bearing structure. That is the tree. That is what you are looking at when you walk through a forest. And now here is where I want to introduce the third and perhaps most stunning physical reality in this story, because so far we have talked about where the mass comes from and where the energy comes from. But there is a third dimension to this, which is what happens when it all goes backwards. What happens when you undo the tree. You put it in a fireplace and you burn it. And I want you to think about this carefully, because burning wood is one of the most familiar experiences in human existence. People have been burning wood for hundreds of thousands of years. It is the most ancient technology we have. And yet I suspect that almost nobody who has ever sat in front of a fire truly understood what they were watching. When you throw a log on the fire and it begins to burn, what you are seeing is the reversal of everything I just described. The high temperature of the fire provides the activation energy needed to start breaking the bonds in the wood, to start pulling those carbon chains apart. And the freed carbon atoms, suddenly released from their solid lattice, immediately collide with the oxygen in the air around them and snap back together, forming carbon dioxide again. The solid wood is becoming invisible gas. The tree is ungrowing. Right in front of you, in real time, the frozen air is unfreezing. The crystallized atmosphere is returning to the atmosphere. And the light and heat you feel from the fire, that warmth on your face, that orange glow in the dark room, that is the sunlight being released. That is photons that left the surface of the sun perhaps 100 years ago, were captured by a tree, locked into chemical bonds, stored as bond energy in the solid wood, and are now, finally, being released as heat and light as those bonds break. You are not watching wood burn. You are watching stored sunlight escape. You are feeling the warmth of a sun that was shining before you were born. The fire in the fireplace is a time machine for solar energy. The log is a battery that was charged by a nuclear reactor 93 million miles away, and the fire is the moment of discharge. When the log is fully burned, when the ashes are cool and the smoke has cleared, the material balance is perfectly restored. The carbon is back in the air as carbon dioxide. The hydrogen that was in the wood has combined with oxygen to become water vapor. The solid tree has returned to the invisible gases it was assembled from. The mass has not disappeared. It has simply changed form and returned to the atmosphere from which it came. And the ash, the little pile of gray ash in the fireplace, that is the dirt part. That is the minerals that the tree pulled from the soil, the calcium and potassium and phosphorus and trace elements. That is the only part of the tree that actually came from the ground. And notice how little ash there is compared to the mass of the log you started with. A 10-pound log might leave a few grams of ash. The rest, the vast, overwhelming majority of the mass of the wood, has gone back into the air as carbon dioxide and water vapor, because that is where it came from. The ground contributed almost nothing to the mass of the tree. The sky contributed almost everything. And I find this genuinely thrilling. Not in some vague, hand-waving way where I say it is wonderful and leave it at that. I mean specifically, physically thrilling in the way that a good calculation is thrilling, in the way that a clean experiment result is thrilling. Because this is a case where the honest arithmetic of chemistry cuts directly against the comfortable intuition that we all walk around with, and wins. The conservation of mass does not negotiate. The chemical bond-energy balance does not make exceptions for what feels right. The tree weighs 2 million pounds, and every pound of it has to come from somewhere, and when you actually do the accounting, when you follow the atoms, you find that they came from the air. I think about this when I walk through a forest now. I look at these enormous structures, these towers of carbon that took centuries to build, and I know that I am looking at frozen atmosphere. I know that the sunlight is in there, locked up in billions of chemical bonds, waiting. I know that the ground underneath is not the source but merely the foundation, the anchor that holds the atmospheric engine in place while it does its work. I know that if I could watch the whole process at the atomic scale, I would see something that looks far more like an industrial process than a garden, a relentless, violent, precise molecular assembly operation powered by nuclear radiation from a nearby star. There is a particular kind of clarity that comes from following the physics all the way down. Not stopping at the comfortable level where things feel intuitive, but pushing past that into the territory where the real arithmetic lives. Because the real arithmetic is almost always stranger and more interesting than the story we tell ourselves before we bother to check. When you walk through a forest and you genuinely understand, not just intellectually accept, but physically feel, that the solid mass around you came out of the invisible air, something shifts in the way you experience the world. The air stops feeling empty. It starts feeling dense with raw material, loaded with heavy carbon atoms just waiting to be caught and assembled into something. The sunlight stops being just warmth and starts being the active agent, the energy supply running the whole assembly process. The trees stop being passive, quiet, peaceful things rooted in the earth and become what they actually are, which is aggressive atmospheric engines running a continuous carbon extraction and solidification operation at enormous scale. And the fire, any fire, becomes this incredible reversal event, this moment where the whole construction project runs backwards in a sudden burst of released energy and the atmosphere gets its carbon atoms back. This is what the physics is doing, all the time, everywhere, in every forest, in every flame, in every breath you take that contains the carbon dioxide exhaled by some burning process somewhere. The carbon cycle is not a textbook diagram. It is the actual, ongoing, continuous mechanical reality of what the atoms around you are doing right now. Mass is being extracted from the air and locked into solid structures in forests all over the planet. Other solid structures are being dissolved back into the air in fires and in the slower combustion of biological decomposition. The atmosphere is simultaneously the raw material supply and the waste dump for an enormous planetary carbon manufacturing operation. And right in the middle of all of this is the sun, 93 million miles away, firing photons at the surface of the planet, charging the batteries, supplying the energy that makes the whole carbon extraction process possible. Without the sun, the carbon dioxide in the air would stay as carbon dioxide. The chemical bonds holding carbon to oxygen are stable. They do not spontaneously break. You need the photon energy to break them, and the photon energy comes from the nuclear fusion at the core of a star. The tree is the interface. The tree is the device that couples the nuclear output of a star to the chemical inventory of a planetary atmosphere, and the result is solid wood. 2 million pounds of frozen air, charged with stored sunlight, standing in the forest where you walk. That is the actual story. The ground is just where the tree parks itself while it does the real work.